Karl, Wilkins, welcome to the Rugby Abroad podcast for episode 14. Mate, how are you?
Good mate. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. The pleasure's all mine. Mate, I just thought we'd just start with a quick introduction from yourself, if you don't mind, just to clear up the basics of how you started playing rugby and how you ended up moving abroad, boss.
Okay, so right from the beginning, I was a footballer, as you know, and I half decent as well. And my uncle was a big rugby man. My cousin played as well, so I basically just went down to watch him play. I think it might have been under 12s, playing in Thurrock, and had some spare boots flying around bizarrely.
Nice.
Chucked them on. Uncle put me on, and I was a lot bigger than the other lads, so obviously it went all right. And then from there I started playing down at Colchester, which is not my local club.
Sorry mate, you were straight into contact rugby? No previous experience of rugby, and you were straight in, boss?
Straight in, yeah.
That's at the deep end, isn't it? You thank your uncle there. Yeah,
well, he's big rugby man. He obviously saw some potential, just stuck me in the mixer from the get-go.
Yeah, good lad.
Yeah. And then I had a couple mates playing at Colchester, which isn't my local club. I'm an Ipswich boy, but did the 30-minute drive down there.
Yeah.
And started playing there from under 13 season. Playing that on Sundays and football on Saturdays. I must have done that until about, I think it was 2 years. I got picked up by Saints EPDG pretty early, so then I started doing that on Monday nights.
The EPDG is the academy equivalent.
Yeah, it's the Elite Player Development Group. Yeah. So yeah, that's the academy group. So I had that on Monday nights. I had busy weeks, mate. I had EPDGs on Mondays, and then I think it was football on Tuesday nights, rugby with Colchester on Wednesdays, football again on Thursday, and games on Saturdays and Sundays. So it was a good time.
Good time,
lots of sport, lots of games.
Who was taxing you about back in the day then to all those different?
It was my old man, Big Dave. He really liked the rugby.
Yeah.
He wasn't a rugby man himself. Like, he didn't. I think he had two injuries when he was younger. So
yeah,
he was more of a football man as well.
Yeah, mate. Similar story myself, and at the end of the day, my old man made me make a decision at 15 of which sport I wanted to go with, because he was just fed up of doing all the driving both. Is that what happened with you?
Yeah, it was actually. I was not really sure what I wanted to do. It was quite young when I had to sort of make a decision, because obviously playing Saturdays and Sundays, when you get older and things start getting a bit more serious, you can't do both. So you have to make a decision. But when you're a 15-year-old boy, you don't want to be making decisions. You just want to be playing. You've got mates in both sports.
Sure.
So yeah, it was difficult. I remember actually stopping. I think I was 14 or 15, and my dad actually wrote me a letter just saying. So it must have been easier for him. Didn't want any arguments in the car going home.
Nice.
Just saying. I was probably better at rugby as well, but I think I was leaning more towards football at the time.
Yeah.
Just because I'd done that all my life. And he was just saying, like, whatever you want to do, 100% support you. Just, we need to make a decision. Just because we need to let the coaches know what you want to do.
Yeah.
Where we're going to be taking you, all this sort of stuff. So then I had to have a think about it, and I went with rugby. So
tough call to make
seriously from then.
As a young lad.
Tough call. Yeah, because I was playing all right standard of football as well when I was a young lad. I was playing some county stuff, a lot of school games. Then it sort of gets to that age at sort of 16 where all of the good players seem to be at private schools playing for their schools, big tournaments like Daily Mail.
Yeah.
And I got approached to go to a private school, play on Saturdays, which obviously mean an end to the football on Saturdays. That was, I skipped quite a bit there, but originally I had an offer to go to Newhall in Chelmsford, but I was about 14. So I finished my
What, to kind of get you into a school to play, like to focus on your rugby?
It was like a rugby school.
Yeah.
I sort of stuck at my old school doing football and rugby until the end of my GCSEs.
Nice.
And then I made the decision to go to St Joseph's College in Ipswich with the view to cracking on a bit more with my rugby. That sort of age where I made the decision to go with it.
Nice. And then you obviously pursued, or you carried on with the EPDG for a while. How long did that go on? And then, sorry, to make an assumption, is it the EPDG? You're in there with kind of a view of when you're leaving school or 18 or whatever. That's like kind of make or break, and you're either getting your first team contract or your first like proper professional contract or not. Is that right?
The EPDG I think goes to under 16s, and then it's juniors I think. Like pre-contract. Contracts at the end of your sixth form year.
Okay.
So, But you want to be in it under 16s. You want to be playing from 16s to 18s to give yourself a real shot of getting a full-time contract.
Yeah. And so what happened with yours?
I had a good time at Saints, like in the age groups. I played up a couple of times with the year above.
Yeah.
Sort of, I was always playing. We had a really good year group as well. And then in my last year, I got injured I had a tough last year because I got injured in pre-season. We went on a school tour to South Africa.
Yeah.
And I got a leg break, my fibula spiral fracture. So I was out for a few months, obviously, which is not what you want in your under 18 year. Like anyone playing in England knows.
Yeah.
And just didn't have a great year, which is partly luck, partly just me. First big injury, probably didn't handle it. How I've just handled my last injury, for example. Because at the time I was playing second row and I thought, oh, well, this is a good opportunity for me to get big.
Yeah.
So I've hit the gym a lot. And then when I come back, struggled a bit more with my just running, other little bits and bobs. It was a big learning process. And as I say, we had a good year at Saints that year. So they gave up a fair few contracts to boys in that age group, and I missed out, which is probably fair enough as well.
Tough though, tough after being with them for so long, I imagine.
Yeah, it was tough, but it's life. It's a big learning curve, just like with the injury as well. So I think they let you know about, I think it was February or March time. It's got so many years ago now. I think it's about February time.
So early on, kind of before end of season, like you've still got time. Have you still got time to then look for other stuff if you want to pursue rugby? I guess.
Yeah, I think that was the idea. Is like you get it done early-ish, so boys know where they're going, concentrate on their exams, end of the school year.
Yeah.
So I think it was about March time, and then from there, just sort of had a month in limbo, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I went down to Cambridge near me as well. Had a training session with them inside.
That was National 1
trial.
Cambridge?
It was I think it might have been National 2 at the time.
Yeah.
Not sure, but like men's rugby. So because obviously in England it's under 18 straight to men's rugby.
Yeah.
Which I'll cover that now. This is a big part of why I came to France. Is the Espoir system, which is basically at the time it was under 23.
Yeah.
So they've got the main side, and then they've got an under 23 squad who play every week in a league format.
Yeah.
So obviously not playing much in my last year under 18s, I wanted an opportunity to play regularly. And it was actually my old EPDG coach, Simon Sinclair, put me in touch with my current agent, Jamie Noon, who finished his career in Breathe, and he was just finishing up his agency exams.
Nice.
And I spoke to him, and he said, "Yeah, look, there'll be some opportunities for you." So I thought about that for a week or so, and then he got back to me saying, "Yeah, there's some interest. Can you get out in I think it was the Easter half term, have a look round, like a little trial?" And obviously I was like, yes. So I flew out with my parents to Brive, and I had Brive is a top 14 club here in France.
Yeah.
I think it was a 2-day trial with them. And then whilst we were in France, Clermont got a hold of Jamie as well. Just like, oh, when's he going back? Like, can you come down and have a look around here as well? And we were like, yeah, we've got our flights booked and all this. And they were like, what? No worries. Like, we'll change the flights. So obviously stuck around for that. Brive and Clermont's not too far away, so we went down there.
Yeah.
The next day, had a look around. Obviously, it's a very big club, so sort of big European club. All of the facilities, the whole town was a lot bigger and like bigger, brighter, sort of than Brive the day before. Like during my test as well, it was pissing it down with rain, and then when I get to Clermont the next day, it's like 30 degrees, bright sunshine. Everything just seemed a lot nicer. So they showed me around there. They showed me around their centre de formation, where the young lads do their training, their food, all of this.
Training centre, for anyone that didn't get the French.
Training centre. Training centre, big training centre, which they shared with football and I think basketball teams, the teams.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your like headspace was like at the time? Because it sounds pretty mental as a 18-year-old.
Yeah, there was a lot going on, and all the handshaking threw me off as well. Like this, especially when we got to Clermont, because just everyone was coming to shake your hand. Just that's how it is. Like
in France, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember we went out for dinner later on that day, and then I went to shake the coach's hand again in the evening. He was like, "Oh, it's just all right. Like just once a day is all right."
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot going on in the short sort of period of time. And then we all went out for dinner in Clermont with a couple of the coaches and some of my parents and Jamie.
Yeah.
Sort of made me an offer there, and I signed it the next day. 3-year deal with Clermont.
Awesome. How's that like dealing with the family at the same time and moving away? Because it probably, out of everyone I've spoken to, 18 is the youngest anyone's like packed the bags and gone to another country to sort of pursue this professional career. What was the chat with your parents like after obviously your dad followed you around from training to training all of your early years? Like he's obviously then gonna send you off to France. So how was that? Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, my dad was really happy for me. Like he's done some miles driving me around the country, like to games, camps, and obviously it was a tough last year for me under 18s, and he was just like thrilled that I'd got this offer with a big club. I'd be playing, so I could see he was thrilled. Mum was a little bit more cautious, sort of. Are you sure? Like
the Frenchies with the Frenchies
bit too much, yeah, with the the French and everything. But yeah, Mum was a bit more cautious. Dad looked very chuffed.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking back, I probably didn't think about it too much, sort of all the whole family aspect and how little I would have been able to get back home and all these sort of things. I think it was like 18-year-old lad had a month or so wondering what he's going to do. And then he had like one of the biggest clubs in Europe giving him a 3-year sort of deal. It was like,
unreal.
Yeah, of course, sign it straight away.
And did you, maybe you were too young to realise at the time like the significance of that 3 years, doing 3 years in the Espoirs in France, how important that is then to be able to move on to professional rugby in France? Yeah,
definitely. But definitely didn't think about it all. But Jamie, my agent, had explained to me this rule where if you're 3 years in the Centre de Formation, the Espoirs Academy set up, then you're then qualified as a homegrown player, which obviously with the rules changing sort of every year, like you needing more and more homegrown players in your matchday squad, that's important being in France now. it's easier, I think, to find clubs.
So you found yourself in Claremont. You did a few years there. How did you find because essentially you're going into like the academy setup of Claremont. How did that compare to Northampton's academy setup? Like, were there similarities, or was it very different? Like the English versus the French, the way they did things.
Yeah. It's hard to compare because obviously I didn't experience it from 18 up in England, and sort of before then it's sort of once or twice a week. It's not like full on.
Yeah.
But it was a whole sort of, like I say, it was a whole training centre for young sides. We had like I think it was from under 14s up until the Espoirs, under 23s. There was like athletics track, gym, rugby pitches, more rugby pitches just down the road. So the setup was class. Like you had everything you needed there. In Claremont as well, they've got the tram line. So I live right next to the main stadium, and I think it was like 3 or 4 stops on the tram, which is right outside the stadium, down to the training centre. So it was class. You had everything you needed, sort of right on your doorstep.
Great. And Claremont, how long did you spend there in the end before you made the move? And tell us about that move. Where did you end up?
I was there for 2 years in Claremont. It was great. Like, it was what I needed. I played a lot with the Espoirs. I trained quite a bit with the first team in my first year, not so much in my second year, which is then when I sort of started to say, like, oh, do you reckon I'll be training much next year in my third year? I want to be pushing on a little bit. Sort of, I was 20, so I wanted to start training more regularly with them, and they basically said, yeah, like, we like you, we want to keep you around, but not sure how many opportunities you'll get.
Yeah, because you're a back rower, and that was your preferred position at the time, or were you still playing second row?
I was still playing second row, but they had told me they saw me more as a back row.
Okay.
But there must have been a big shortage of second rows at the time. Like, I just always seemed to be playing second row anyway, which I wasn't fussed about. But they were telling me long term, we see you here, so I wanted to play there and sort of
basically do what they want. Exactly. Yeah. Do what they
want.
Yeah. So you can continue to impress, and then exactly. So then 2 years at Claremont, and then you ended up moving down to Beziers, where you still are today. Correct me if I'm wrong.
5th season in Beziers now. Yeah, that is
5
correct.
seasons.
Yeah, 5th one now. So it's been a long ride in Beziers.
So
how I got here, it was the same story. Sort of, Jamie set it up. Came down, had a look, had a chat with the coach at the time, and it sounded like just what I needed. It's like I'd be training regularly with the first team, so there'd be some chances to play, which is what I wanted to do. So I signed a 2-year deal with Beziers, and I moved, I think it was June time. We started beginning of July pre-season. But I sort of signed, flew home from Claremont, and I was like, all right, sweet, I'll sort this out when I get back. And I had a mate at the time playing in Oyonnax called Dan Lewis, playing in Coventry now. Yeah. And he had a French car, and he was like, oh, I'm moving back home, like, have this car. So I picked up his car, so it was an old Ford Focus, drove that from my home in Ipswich all the way to Claremont, packed up the apartment, drove from Claremont down to Beziers, and my first couple of months I was in like these there'd be like studio flats for the young lads right next to the stadium.
Yeah.
Because I'd been living in a flat for 2 years, I had like way too much stuff for this little studio, so I just was crammed in there first. And then first season in Beziers was a tough one because obviously the coach who signed me, it was going all right. I was training, I was waiting for my chances, and then the team got in a bit of a rough patch around Christmas time, and they ended up getting rid of the coaches. So then it was sort of like everything back to square one. Sort of had to start again with new coaches around Christmas time. So I only got one game in my first year. It was a frustrating year. As was my second year, I only got one game again, which was obviously tough. Being 21, 22 that season, sort of needed to kick on.
But you were still playing week in, week out.
I was still playing week in, week out. Yeah, sorry, I was still playing week in, week out with the Espoirs.
Yeah,
but it was a pool below what I was playing with Claremont.
So that's frustrating, mate, because you're obviously away from home. You're pursuing the rugby, but that's 2 years you've hardly played any rugby or at the level you want to be playing at. I imagine that can be very frustrating. Did you have had a good group of boys around you that made that a lot easier, or did you feel like a bit isolated because you're so far away from home at that time? Sorry to get deep on it, but it's interesting because we've had guys on the podcast that in similar situations where they fall out with coaches changeovers and then out of favour, in favour, out of favour. For me, I think it's doubly as hard certainly from my own experience when you're abroad and it happens that you find yourself just completely out of the mix and you sort of I certainly did at the time begin to question why am I doing this, why am I away from home, etc. It's obviously for you it was a waiting game and it's paid off massively because you're obviously a fixture in the first team now, but do you remember those feelings at all? If you had to,
yeah, we were lucky because we had a good group. I had Wesley Douglas now playing in Brive. He arrived same time as me in the Espoirs, so to have two young English lads sort of together, that was very helpful. And then we had Lockie Monroe, New Zealand 10, and Jamie Hagan, fan of the podcast. Also, so we had a good little group. I was sort of the only one who wasn't playing. They were all playing together.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they were really helpful, especially my last season. When I was 21, 22, last season of my first contract here.
Yeah.
Sort of thinking about, do I want to stay here? Could be doing the same thing at home with the job.
Yeah.
Not missing the family, a long-term relationship as well. So I had all these things sort of weighed up, and I had a chat with Jamie, and he sort of told me you can do this. You're good enough. You're going to get your chance. Just stick at it. And then the club offered me a 2-year deal. That was it was another Espoir, which was the latest age you could be an Espoir.
Yeah.
A pro deal at the end of that, and the following year I started playing. Then I went from one game, and then in my third season I had 23 games.
Wow,
the pros
nice.
Sort of kicked on. Had an English 10 that year. Didn't really. Left-handed passes weren't great, but kicking percentage was unbelievable.
You're not talking about me by any chance.
Oh, I am, yeah. So that was a great first year playing. We had a good group.
Yeah.
Good group of lads. Playing every week. The coach was he had a lot of confidence in me. So that was class. We just missed out on the playoffs.
Nice.
Which is frustrating, but yeah.
Yeah, we did. How did you obviously were in favour with the coaches at that time, and just reflecting back on my that same year that you were talking about, my year in Béziers, I found, and you don't have to answer the questions if you think anyone's listening that might catch on, but I found the French rugby in general is quite political, and political, I mean, with the relationships with coaches. I think all rugby is to a certain extent, but I felt it particularly in my year where I had issues with coaches, sort of favourite players or godsons of presidents or whatever and at the end of the day, it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. But I guess is that just part and parcel of French rugby? It's it's obviously this big spectacle, but as a player, I think before you go over there, at least if you're being pre-warned with a bit of hindsight, you might be interested to know that rugby over there is like there are these issues underlying in it a little bit in French rugby that certainly I experienced. I don't know if you've experienced anything like it, where you might look on the team sheet, not see your name, and be disappointed, but it's not for the reasons that you should be necessarily. Like, I remember a few times thinking, well, this isn't a decision based on performance or whatever else. Is that something that rings a bell, or it doesn't? Don't worry if you don't want to go into it.
No, yeah, a little bit. But obviously, I think that happens a lot in every sport. Sort of, there's an element sometimes of it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
So that can happen anywhere. I do think the French, they like to stick to like what's trusted. If they know someone longer, it's a big game or whatever, then they'll go with what's trusted, who they know longer. Things like this. Personally, I think there was a time when there was one guy on loan here, and he would always be training with the first team ahead of me sometimes, and I'd be like, oh, it's a bit strange.
Yeah.
But that might have been part of his loan deal. But apart from that, no real personal experience of it getting in my way too much.
Not getting the shun from the coaches too often.
Not getting the shun.
It's good. It's good, mate. So yeah, just my personal experience. It's my bitterness coming through a little bit about my year, because we missed out on playoffs. Maybe if we would have got playoffs that year, I might have extended my stay. Who knows? But we'll leave it there, mate. Like we were saying, leaving the family and living abroad is kind of a hard move. Something doesn't seem you had too much problem with or didn't overthink at the time. Would you have any advice for guys thinking about moving abroad now? Because at this time, obviously you have National 1, National 2 leagues cancelled or semi-cancelled until the new year, and I know a lot of guys are looking at going abroad and playing and stuff. What would you sort of advise for being prepared, looking back with a bit of knowledge of the...
Well, I'd definitely think about it a bit longer, maybe a week or so. Have a chat to... I mean, if you know anyone playing abroad, have a chat with them beforehand. I mean, I only had my agent to speak to, who obviously had a different experience to me coming over as a England international. He was always going to have a different experience. So maybe just chat to someone who's already played abroad, no matter what country. Think about it and weigh up all these pros and cons of missing family. Also, sort of set out a long-term goal, because if you're not planning on being here long-term, you don't have to think as much. You can just go for it. Yeah. If you're thinking long-term, then you have to think about family, how much you're going to miss them, girlfriends, if you got them, or boyfriends, whatever.
Nice. And so speaking on that, you said you're in a long-term relationship. You had to sort of keep that going while you've been in France. Has your girlfriend moved out now? Yeah,
Molly was here last year. Béziers wasn't a great first year for her to be living in France. There was a lot of sort of family issues back home, obviously. Then the whole COVID thing and the language barrier. Her first time moving out as well. So anyone who first time you move out, it's always hard, whether it's overseas, if you're just going to uni. Yeah. Everyone experiences it. So it was all sort of rolled into one. It was quite a tough year for her. She's back home now working. This is my last year of my contract. So sort of this was the plan. She'll work. I'll see out my last year, and I actually have to speak to her this time instead of just signing deals and letting her know after. Sort of plan together this time. Yeah.
Proper grown-up decisions now, isn't it? Cause
mate. I've turned into an adult whilst I've been in Béziers.
Yeah. So. No, mate, it's true, because like you said, I imagine definitely the same situation for my other half, that when you move abroad as a rugby player, you've got that environment ready-made for you. It's you're playing with a group of 30 or 40 guys, so every training session you've got people to talk to, people to laugh and joke around with and stuff. And when you're talking about your other half, then for them, I can't even imagine how hard that is, because essentially their support network is just you, isn't it? So, and then of course, like any nice, you know, other girlfriends or whoever from the squad or wives, but I mean it's very limited, and that's hard, and then to top off other stuff like that might be happening back home, like you say, like family issues and global pandemics.
Yeah, I mean it was all going on last season. It was a tough one.
Yeah. So you pulled through it. So now you're over that hurdle, and yeah, I guess whatever's next, I'm sure you'll take the time to think and talk like any grown rugby player does nowadays.
Yeah.
Especially as you've been abroad for so long. Is it something? Are you looking to move back to England? You've been playing first team rugby now in a high level in the Pro League 2 with Bezier now for a good 3 years at least. Obviously you had a couple of appearances before that as well. Have you got some ambition to move back home, or to potentially stay in France and push on, or are you happy in Bezier?
Yeah, I think any sort of young rugby or any rugby player in general, they always want to. We're greedy, like we always want more. We want to be playing at the higher level. Then if you're there, you want to play a bit higher. So, like, of course, it's within my ambitions to play sort of top tier, whether that's in France, England. I think having been in France so long, it'd be nice to crack the top 14. So that's sort of a goal of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? One day, hopefully, get back home as well, play there. It's it'd be
while you're young. While you're young, mate.
Yeah, whilst I'm still young, whilst I'm hanging on to my youth.
No, yeah, it's good. It's good to hear that you've obviously got these goals that you wanna go and achieve. I think it's definitely doable. I see your name more often than not in the Midi Olympique. That's the big French rugby newspaper, the rugby paper in France, in their team of the week pretty often, to be honest. So you must be doing something right, mate. Not to blow.
We check it every week. Used to check and see how many stars you got every week, didn't you?
Oh, I was struggling for stars, to be honest, in that last year in Bezier, but yeah, mate. No, obviously follow the French league closely, and no, it's good to see you with your name up there in lights a little bit. Hopefully that can lead to something and help you to achieve your goal that you want to play in the top 14. That'd be nice. I won't ask you if there's any sniffs or anything put you in the shit, but it's your last year of your contract, so every performance counts, right? I guess.
Yeah, that's true, mate. And obviously we were chatting just before we went on about my injury, so obviously I haven't played too much this year.
Yeah.
I've only had 3 games, so I'm sort of just focusing on playing and sort of winning these games up until Christmas. Just getting games under my belt. I mean, with COVID and then the injury, I was out for about like 8 months, so just trying to get that match fitness back up.
Sure, mate. Yeah, that's absolutely key. You must have a few mates playing back home at quite a high level, because you were in that, like you said, that age group that you had at Northampton Saints Academy. It was a very good year. How is it to see some of those guys? Do you have anyone close to you that's like playing at a high level that sort of you talk to regularly, or that you sort of bounce off of about, you know, that kind of level in professional rugby? And is it hard seeing them go places back home and thinking like, if you would have got that Northampton gig after academy, then maybe things could have been different, or are you quite happy and comfortable with the route you've taken? Because it's obviously a different route, and it's a less trodden route, so to speak, but it's clearly seems to be getting you where you want to be at the same time.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got a few friends playing professional rugby now. It's at my school actually. I had a good age group as well. There was I had Lewis Ludlam. I was good friends with him at school. I'm good friends with him. Obviously playing now for Saints and England. We had Dan Lewis, Luke Junot, both playing at Coventry. Got Tom Emery, Ethan Waddleton, both with the England Sevens. England Sevens. George Wakakoki at Newcastle. So got lads, friends back home playing high standard.
Nice.
And no, I've never really thought about sort of their route or my route to starting to play professional rugby. It's just everyone's sort of got their own road to follow, and mine led me over the pond to France, and just see where it takes me in the future. But.
Nice. Is it nice then to see the other guys that you knew from school or academy doing well then? Do you look over and say, oh, that's nice, that guy's name in the paper or whatever, or man of the match or scoring tries, however? Is that...
Yeah, no. Well, of course it's nice to see your mates doing well.
Silly question. But I'll tell you what, they won't be getting invites to the Rugby Abroad podcast, because it doesn't sound like any of them are playing abroad, mate. So not yet. Can't close
off any potential guests, can you, mate?
No, you're right. Ears and eyes are open at all times.
Honestly.
Tell you what, it's non-stop, mate. When we're just going back to the rugby, how does the... Obviously you were 18 when you moved over, I know, but you must have got a feel for the difference in the rugbies in England and France. What are the focuses? What's the kind of game style? How does that differ for you as a second row flanker? How does your role differ in both places?
Yeah, I get asked this quite a bit, but obviously having left at 18,
sorry, mate.
Can't quite. I don't like to compare too much because I haven't experienced it, so I don't think it'd be fair. This year is sort of my third year playing pros, and I've been calling lineouts, so I've obviously taken a bit more responsibility with that.
How's that in another language? Do you get confused at times? Or have you been in France long enough to think in French as well?
No, yeah, that's fine now.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing it sort of from my first or second year in Claremont, so it's just like second nature now. It's not too much of a bother. Molly actually said one night I was sleep talking, just shouting things in French. She was like, "Must be you calling lineouts." So I was like, yeah, just complete noise.
Sleep and dream in lineouts. That's a first I've heard, but that's class. That's head in the game.
Yeah, mate.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mate, it sounds like you mentioned your agent, Jamie Noon, quite a few times, and on another episode I was speaking to Cookie Marfu, who is a Tongan international who plays over in Jersey, and we were discussing how sort of the negative side of working with agents, and how sometimes you just got to get out there yourself a little bit and make contacts and speak to clubs and speak to guys that are in your network to help you get gigs. But to be honest, it sounds like from what you've been saying, you struck gold with Jamie Noon, and it sounds like he was absolutely ideal for helping you sort out your moves to France, and then just encouraging you on to stay on, and it sounds like you guys speak quite a lot, so he sounds like a properly good agent.
Yeah, obviously for me, coming over as a young player, I wasn't looking to move around clubs too often. We got where I wanted to go with Claremont, had 2 good years there, got to Beziers, and not really been looking to move or needed to move, so it's been perfect for me. I've got my game time, even though I had to wait for it, but yeah. And he's good for me. We talk regularly. Obviously he's gone through a lot of the similar sort of problems I'll have gone through with different bits and bobs in France. Helped me with the language as well, and yeah, he was class for me. He's class for me, I should say.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, give him a quick shout out for the pod.
I've given him heaps apparently.
Yeah.
Asking questions.
No, good stuff. Like I said, it's good to hear because not everyone has these positive experiences. Especially with, I know guys in England who have agents in England, but who aren't kind of qualified to work in the French market directly. So they dip in and use French agents who then, you know, the player involved never meets them and doesn't really get a good feedback about what's going on with the communications or whatever with the clubs, and I think it's quite a difficult thing to do. That it makes it even more difficult to move abroad. And like you mentioned before, there's now less and less foreign players permitted in each matchday squad each year in France. I'm not sure how's that rule applied now? Do you know how many roughly?
It's an average, so like you could field 15 foreign players one game, and then sort of 2 and 3 the next sort of 4 and 5. It evens itself out. I think it's at 16 this year. 16 as an average French qualified players. So
which leaves about 7 foreign player spots on average, you'd say.
Yeah.
Which is a lot less than before. Then I think they're reducing it by 1 every year. Do you know if there's plans to further reduce?
Next year it goes up again, and then 2 more years after that. I think not 100% on that.
And what's the vibe in France around that? What are French guys quite happy about that? And I know as a foreign player who once played in France, I'm not sure the benefit of being so strict on that kind of thing. I guess you're in a nice position where, because you're an espoir, you qualified as an espoir and you qualify as a French player. It's a nice thing for you, I guess. But when is it really making a difference to French rugby? Is it taking away quality? Is it bringing through more French quality, do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, sometimes we'll get a joke from a couple of lads in the team about like the foreigners, blah blah blah. But it's never. I don't really. No, it doesn't come up much amongst the squad. But obviously for French rugby, I think the idea was to have more and more French players coming through the academies, playing top flight rugby. But then obviously this year they created a 3rd professional league. So there's obviously more chances for professional rugby for young French players. But yeah, I think it's like I say, for me, the rule, it doesn't like because I've qualified. I've sort of done my time as a espoir, and I am now qualified. I don't think about it too much. And obviously, coaches and presidents and who's signing players, they have to take all of this into consideration. So I think it's big sort of on the recruitment side, because you can't be going signing 15, 20 foreign lads if at the end of the year you're going to get hit with a big fine and not bringing through your own French players.
Yeah, sure. No. Just looking at it from a personal point of view, I definitely felt the difference between my first year in France and my last year in France with regards to when I was looking for contracts after Béziers and looking at new opportunities. There was definitely less about for someone of my age and nationality being a foreigner in my position. And I guess also in my experience, I would have needed to have, let's say, Premiership experience or international experience to be considered that year, and it's quite tough to take, especially when your opportunities being reduced from, let's say, you might be one of 8 foreign players the first year and then one of 7 the next year. If you're then looking for a new club, it's a tough ask, especially if it's clubs that are going well, they're happy with their foreign players and stuff. It definitely limits the opportunities for foreign players to play in these top leagues in France. But again, maybe it's just me being bitter.
No, I think definitely it's getting sort of harder and harder with the rule changing every year.
Yeah,
I think it's harder to get to France. I think once you're in France, if you sort of play well, you build up some credit here. Then it's easier to sort of stay with the club. But I think getting to France and sort of bouncing around is going to be a bit tougher the more the rule changes.
Definitely, mate. And let's kind of round it up on a lighter note. Have you got any funny like international stories that you want to share with the listeners?
Funny international stories?
Yeah, I mean, you're in France, you're abroad, you're playing rugby. I'm sure you've got a few stories up your sleeve. I know I've put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, I think being with the same club for 5 years, and maybe these stories might get me in trouble. Like, it's a bit obvious where they're going to be coming from.
All right, you don't have to give anything away, mate. No names.
Nah.
Keep it anonymous. No, just like any funny like language instances, like mishaps, interviews gone wrong. Not this one. This has been great, but
interviews gone wrong. I actually had to do press today. It's always a struggle. Sort of. I remember my first interview after a game. It's no funny stories here, but I remember just staring at the journalist like knackered. Didn't understand his question. In the end, another player sort of helped me out a bit. But yeah, it's one thing doing an interview in French when you're not tired, but then after a game, it's a struggle, as you know. But
yeah, I mean,
languages are just easy for you, though, aren't they? Full language catchy.
It's all right. It's not bad, but mate, after a few beers in you in the après match, you're flying, aren't you? In the early days, I mean.
I actually struggled with my French first sort of year or two.
Did you not study a bit at school?
No, I did German for 1 year, which was useless. But yeah, I was living next to a Georgian prop who spoke unbelievable French, unbelievable English. My first year in Claremont, this is. Georgie Sharashidze, and he then left at the end of my first year, and I was just like, shit, like, what am I going to do now?
Oh, so you were speaking with him in English?
Yeah, and then anything I needed, he'd help me out. But then he left. There was a load of new foreigners coming in that year, and I was sort of the one who was supposed to be able to speak a bit of French and help them out. So I kind of learned on the job in my second year. It's getting gradually a bit more respectable.
Nice. Nice, Karl. Listen, mate, I appreciate you taking us through your story. You're still playing rugby abroad, and long may it continue as long as you want to, and your objectives are that way inclined. Mate, it's great to speak to you. A breath of fresh air, and I hope you get a few more games under your belt this season, because threes, come on. What were you last year? 23, you said? No,
I went 23, then COVID year was 16. We got cut short, and then...
It got cancelled, yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't count. Doesn't count, does it? No. It's just 23 in this season. So I'm on 3. Need to rack them up.
Rack them up, mate. Rack them up.
Try to get a few more stars for you, to give you some smiles on Monday mornings.
Please do. I'll even get the social media manager to chuck it up on Instagram, your stars.
Over.
Nice, mate. I appreciate your time, and I wish you all the best. And take it easy, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, Karl.
Cheers, boss.
You can subscribe to the podcast at rugbyabroad.com. Thanks for listening in, and I hope you join me for the journey.